this is Nick from Break Press Games, and today we're going to talk about improvising a session. Alright, so why are we going to talk about improvising a session today? Well, it just so happens that I am 38 sessions now into my Open Table Sandbox campaign, and a lot of my sessions are improvised on the fly, based upon some hooks and story beats that I have written down. Now, if you end up finding that this information is interesting or useful to you, please like, subscribe, and comment down below. It is a huge boon in pushing my content in the YouTube algorithms. So, all right, so let's jump into it. When I'm going to improvise a session, and I am going to end up using the example of session 38, which just happened a few days ago. First and foremost, when I am preparing for an improvised session, that afternoon I will take Spooky, my dog, on a long walk. And we will go for a walk, and I will make sure to not listen to a podcast. I will make sure not to talk on the phone and not to look at my phone and, be worried about emails and news articles or whatever. I am going to be in the moment, Spooky and I just enjoying a walk. And why am I doing that? I'm doing that because I'm allowing my mind to wander. And I think about my players' goals. I think about the impacts of their actions. I think about the environments around me, particularly like if we're on a wilderness hike. I'll think about, a tree stump like that would be really cool, or that ravine would be a really interesting challenge for them to have to negotiate. Things like that. And so I'll be out on this walk, and I'll also be thinking about previous story beats and hooks that I have dropped that they have ignored. And what are the ramifications of them having ignored this thing that I had set in motion in my brain? And so I get back from the walk and I write down 3 or so hooks or story beats relating to their goals, actions, and new threads that I want to introduce. And so I have an example of that right here. So I wanted to, over the summer, I wanted to introduce Triss and Irid Hive Warden. And so I had written down sounds of bees, particularly when the sun is out. Bees pester the person with the lowest luck check or get stung. DC 5 fort save. One time only. Fail equals that PC is allergic. My apologies if anybody has any type of trauma regarding bees. So I wanted to introduce these 2 characters, and these 2 characters are actually going to be in the Standard Courier Volume 2 in order to set up a future adventure, because I love doing that. Now, so in this example, I had jotted down this information for my players to encounter. Now, a lot of times I will jot down, if they involve a new NPC or monster, I'll jot down stats on a Post-it or in a notebook. In my case, 9 times out of 10 on a Post-it. And sometimes it's not necessarily PCs, or NPCs, I should say, or monsters. Instead, I envision an environment or a scene. Now, for session 38... I had actually envisioned this scene right here. And this scene is actually, you can sort of make out that there are some trees and a path. And these trees, what I envisioned was that there were 2 rock formations and trees across the way from each other. And over time, for whatever reason, maybe there was an old log that had fallen between the 2, but the roots of the trees had grown across the path and become intertwined into a naturally or really unnaturally forming arch. I thought that would be a really cool thing for my players to encounter. And so with this idea in mind, the session begins with my players. They start off hungry, and so my players go through a recap of the previous session. They think about what they want to do in the session, and they want to travel to Hillwood Camp. And so then they go into the Old Barn Tavern in order to eat some food to start the day. And that's important because Stennard, everybody's starving, and I have famine rules. That's a thing. And so they go in hoping that the Old Barn Tavern has some food. I ended up having them rolling randomly on the Around the Common Fire table in here for who is in the bar at the time. And the names that they roll up are Al's Crowgrinder or Grounder and Aru Il Portent, who is a fortune teller. And they immediately gravitate to the person sitting at the table with the tarot cards out. And so this is, as I said, this is an unplanned thing. I rolled it randomly on this table. And so I'm thinking to myself, oh, what do I want to do with this fortune teller? And it just so happens that I own this deck of Lateria cards that were produced by James Posinell from Horseshark Games. You may be familiar with his work. I've done a video in the past on the House of the Red Doors, which inspired the Protectorate of Genulane, pictured behind me. And so I own these cards. And so I said, ooh, I'm going to grab these cards. And so I grab them out of my cabinet and I pull them out. I shuffle them up and I deal a card. And by a fantastic stroke of luck, I end up drawing the Arch. So now I've already set up, on accident, I've set up, oh, here is the perfect opportunity to pull this into the narrative. The next thing that I draw is the bird. Now, the bird, what could it mean? It could be a symbol of freedom. It could be a symbol of XYZ, whatever type of thing. And I just, pull some stuff out of my ass. And ultimately, just being vague. And then the last thing that I pull is the dagger. And I'm like, oh, this is a symbol of, a conflict ahead or a potential betrayal or whatever. And I spin some sort of yarn. And then one of my other PCs sits down with Aru Il Portent and they end up getting their fortune read. And this is perfect because it muddles things and it doesn't make things necessarily into a direct correlation. But I've got ideas. In my brain, I've got ideas. So then they decide, okay, we're ready. We've eaten some food. We're going to travel. And they decide that they're going to travel to Hillwood Camp. And I have them roll randomly on the North Road table in one of the adventures that I've published. And they end up rolling 2 encounters. And the 2 encounters are a corrupted elk and a poacher. And so I remember that I have listed on here that they had encountered, they would encounter Al's Crowgrounder. And I was like, oh, that is perfect. And so our poacher ends up being Al's Crowgrounder. And so they stumble upon this guy. He's being attacked by a corrupted elk. He looks injured. And they rush to help him. And they take on the elk. And there's a battle. And one of the 0 level PCs dies. It's great. And so now they feel like a kinship with Al's Crowgrounder, who is listed in here as idolizing Tucker and Hems, who is a NPC that they killed several sessions back. So now we've got everything set up for that betrayer, for that dagger in the fortune. And so this is perfect. Everything runs perfectly like clockwork now. So Al's Crowgrounder says because of the rains the previous night, the North Road is all washed out, and he knows a better way. And they trust him implicitly. Why? I don't know. But they decide to follow Al's, and Al's leads them up this path, and the path leads to this arch. And so now, with everything set in motion, Laster, who is the character that had this had the fortune read, sees the arch and sees it as a sign and decides to approach on their own. Now, the arch, I decide, has roots that will attack Laster. I wasn't sure if I was going to have monsters in there or roots, what it was going to be, but up in the branches up above are a bunch of wretch ravens. And so now we've got the bird. And so it turns into a huge battle between the PCs and the roots of the tree, and the crows coming down from above, the wretch ravens coming down from above and attacking the PCs. And then, as all of this is taking place, the PCs are in this huge battle. Things are going on round number 2. I have Al's Crow Grounder come up behind Laster and attempt to shank him in the gut. And he does a bunch of damage, but doesn't kill Laster. And so now we've got the betrayal. So everything that was set in motion by these randomly pulled cards has now come to fruition. The fortune is correct. What happens now? The PCs end up killing Al's Crow Grounder. They retreat from the battle. There's more that I could tell, but the important thing was here was this set piece encounter that all came together just on an idea of a vision of something that they could encounter, and some random rolled stuff on some random tables and these cards. And so this is how I use tables and play aids to fill in the blanks and turn a session from some ideas that were in my head on a dog walk and turn them into a whole big thing. And you know what? This encounter is definitely something that I am going to turn into one of these pamphlets or an encounter in a future adventure. So that is my treatise on improvising a session. I hope that is useful to you. I highly recommend using random encounter tables. I highly recommend using play aids like these Lateria cards. But additionally, most importantly, I encourage you to go out into the world and just let your mind wander. This is Nick from Breaker Press Games. Thank you for supporting indie games and indie game designers. Let's talk about some other stuff. How would you like to get grimdark content sent to your mailbox every month? Become a noble patron on the Breaker Press Patreon, and you will get cool stuff like encounter pamphlets and class guides sent to your mailbox. It's $5 and above. Go check it out in the doobly-doo below. The Protectorate of Genuine is a spiritual journey for one PC and one judge, comparable to the Green Knight or Luke on Dagobah. It is available through the Breaker Press web store now, or you can encourage your FLGS to pre-order it wherever they acquire good...